Storm the Lightning Fairy. Weather Fairies. Rainbow Magic. Storm the Lightning Fairy can't stop the sky from fizzing without her glittery lightning feather. Rachel and Kirsty must lend a hand before a loosing lightning bolt causes terrible trouble. There's a magic feather in each Rainbow Magic story. Help the girls to collect them all and restore the weather to Fairyland. Magic in the air. I can't believe tomorrow is my last day here, groaned Rachel Walker. She was staying for a week's holiday with her friend Kirsty Tate at the Tate's house in Weatherbury. The girls had so many adventures together. They knew it was going to be difficult to say goodbye. They were walking to the park, keen to get outside now the rain had stopped. It had been pouring down all night, but now the sun was shining. Put your coat on though, won't you? Mrs. Tate had told them before they set off. It looks quite breezy outside there. It's been such fun having you to stay, Kirsty told her friend. I don't think I'll ever forget this week. Will you? Rachel shook her head. No way, she agreed firmly. The two friends smiled at each other. It had been a very busy week. A snowy, windy, cloudy, sunny, misty week. Thanks to Jack Frost and his naughty goblins. The goblins had stolen the 7 magic tail feathers from Doodle, the Fairyland weather cockerel, and taken one each into the human world. The feathers were used by the weather fairies to control the weather, so the goblins were stirring up all kinds of trouble. Rachel and Kirsty were helping the weather fairies to get the feathers back. Without them, Doodle was just an ordinary iron weather vane. Kirsty's dad had found him lying in the park after he'd chased the goblins in the human world. Mr. Tate had brought him home and put him on the roof of the old barn. Doodle's got 5 of his magic feathers back now, but I don't hope we find the last 2 before you have to go home, Kirsty said, pushing open the park's gate. Rachel nodded, but before she could say anything, there was a pattering sound and raindrops started splashing down. The girls looked up in dismay to see a huge purple storm cloud covering the sun. The sky was darkening by the second, and the rain was falling more and more heavily. Quick! Kirsty shouted, before we get soaked! The girls started to run, and Rachel put her hands over her head as raindrops pelted them from the side. She could hardly see the path ahead through the sudden downpour. Where are we going? She yelled. Let's just find some shelter, Kirsty replied, grabbing Rachel's hand and pulling her along. I'm soaked through already. The girls stopped under a large chestnut tree near the park entrance. The tree's wide leafy branches gave good cover. Great idea, shivered Rachel, trying to shake the raindrops from her coat. But just as she said that, there was a deafening rumbling of thunder, followed by an almighty flash. The whole sky was lit up by a blast of lightning. Kirsty and Rachel watched in alarm as a lightning bolt slammed straight in the chestnut. "We need to get away from here quickly," Kirsty cried, jumping back in fright. "It's dangerous being under the tree in a thunderstorm." "Wait a minute," Rachel said, staring at the branch. Rain was pouring off her shoulders, but she didn't seem to notice. "Kirsty, look, the branch is sparkling." And so it was. The leaves were shimmering, a bright glittering green glowing against the darkness of the day. Tiny twinkling lights were flickering all over the bark of the branch. It reminded Kirsty of the trees they'd seen in fairyland. The way they almost seemed to sparkle with fairy dust, and that made her think that maybe... "It's a magical storm!" Kirsty exclaimed in delight, her eyes almost as bright as the shining leaves. "Look at the sky, Rachel!" Both girls gazed up in wonder as the lightning flashed again and a million sparkling lights danced around the thunderclouds before fading away into the darkness. Rachel grinned with excitement. "It's magical, all right, but very wet," she laughed. "Let's find somewhere drier and safer. Come on." We are on to chapter 2, The Fairy Storm. The two girls charged out of the park and back to the road. The rain was still beating down, plastering their hair against their heads. It was so dark and wet that all the cars driving past had their headlights on and their windscreen wipers whipping from side to side. Rather than run all the way home, Kirsty pointed ahead. "Let's shelter in there," she cried. Rachel blinked the raindrops from her eyelashes as she followed her friend up the path of a large red brick building. "Weatherby Museum," she read on a small blue sign. Rachel pulled the double doors open and she and Rachel tumbled inside. Water dripped onto the doormat as Rachel shook her sudden hair back from her face. "Phew," she whistled. "Talk about stormy weather." Kirsty was looking thoughtful. "It might be the goblins with the lightning feather who's behind us," she said. "He has to be close by, don't you think?" "Definitely," Rachel agreed. Before she could say anything else, she was interrupted by a deafening roar. Rachel clutched Kirsty's arm. "What was that?" she whispered. Kirsty giggled at her friend's alarmed face. "I should have warned you. There's a dinosaur display here," she said. "Some dinosaur bones were found in Weatherby years and years ago. The museum has an enormous model of how the dinosaur would have looked. It roars and moves. Come on, I'll show you." Kirsty pushed open another set of double doors that led into one of the museum galleries. A group of people were being shown around by a tour guide. Kirsty pointed to an enormous model dinosaur. Rachel stared at the long neckboard body and huge tail of the model. The dinosaur was standing in water that was clearly supposed to represent a river. Spiky rubber fish floated around its feet. "Wow," she exclaimed. Kirsty grinned. "Watch this," she said, and pressed a big red button. The dinosaur leaned down and opened its jaws. It snapped up one of the peculiar-looking fish, then lifted up its head so that the fish tumbled down in its belly. "That's brilliant," Rachel said, laughing. "What happens if you push the blue button here?" "That's what happened," Kirsty giggled. As the dinosaur's roar faded, Rachel couldn't help overhearing the tour guide. "Listen," she hissed to Kirsty. "I don't know where this fairy exhibit has come from," the guide was saying in a puzzled voice. She shrugged. "I've just come back from my holiday. It must be in the display. Maybe somebody's discovered that fairies were around at the same time as dinosaurs." The group laughed politely. "Anyway, let's move on to the natural history room," she said. "It's just through here." Rachel and Kirsty crept to the back of the tour group to look at the fairy exhibit. If they stood on tiptoes, they could just about see over all the heads of the display case. There seemed to be a tiny shape in there, but they couldn't quite make out what it was. As the group followed the tour guide out of the room, there was another loud growl of thunder, and the girls saw a dazzling flash of lightning at the window. Once again, the sky seemed to glitter with a stream of dancing silver sparkles. Then, all the lights went out inside the museum. "Oh dear, it's a power cut," the guide said in dismay as her tour group gasped. "Follow me, everyone. I think we have some torches in a cupboard through here." Rachel and Kirsty waited until the group had left the room, then went to take a closer look at the display case. There, inside, was a real fairy, glowing with magic, and she was waving frantically at them. "Rachel in danger." "It's Storm, the lightning fairy," cried Rachel, hurrying to open the case. She found a tiny catch on the side and unattached it so that the glass door swung open. "Hello again," said Storm in relief. "I'm really glad to see you two." Rachel and Kirsty had met all the weather fairies at the start of their feather-finding mission when the King and Queen of Fairyland had magically summoned the girls to ask for their help. Storm had long, straight, white gold hair, and she wore a striking purple trouser suit. A golden lightning strike hung on a chain around her neck, and her purple wand sent out little crackling lightning bolts whenever it moved. Thank you for listening me reading Storm the Lightning Fairy. Tomorrow I will be reading Hayley the Rain Fairy. Bye everyone.